multicultural and multi-religious city. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. I would like to present you my opinion about this phenomenon of Thessaloniki. Well, it is generally accepted that Thessaloniki represents a model of historic stratification characteristic of many ancient cities in Mediterranean and Asia Minor. Located upon the major terrestrial and maritime routes linking Europe with the Orient and the Balkan Peninsula with the Aegean Sea, Thessaloniki has had a continuous presence for over 23 centuries. Its geopolitical location has been of crucial importance as an axis that has shaped and continues to shape the economic and demographic characteristics of the city. According to the theory that urban space contributes mostly to the development of a dialectical relationship between various ethnic religious groups in a modern city, the survived Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, and Greek post-Byzantine monuments of Thessaloniki are considered as the evidence of the cosmopolitan and multicultural identity of the city. Today, I would like to present a brief overview of Thessaloniki's long history, focusing on the meanings of coexistence and cultural plurality as they are testified by its historical monuments and archaeological sites. Just a second. Thessaloniki was founded by Cassander, the king of Macedonia, in 315 before Christ, as one of the post-Alexandrian Greek cities and became an important political, military, and commercial center in the Macedonian province of the Roman Empire. Its privileged and strategic location was a decisive factor in the city's evolution. The city was upgraded in the 2nd century before Christ with the construction of the Via Egnatia, the famous road connected the Adriatic coast to Hellespont, Europe to Asia and beyond. Thessaloniki was the most important port along this axis. In consequence, the city accepted a large number of immigrants and developed into a rich cosmopolitan center. After the Battle of Philippi in 42 before Christ, Thessaloniki was declared a free city, civitas libera, relieved of the taxes paid to Rome, enjoined its own laws, and elected its own magistrates. At the same time, the imperial cult was founded in Thessaloniki as a political and religious action to grant divine honors upon the Roman emperors, using conventions similar to other cities and provinces across the empire. When St. Paul visited Thessaloniki, I don't see them. Okay. There were captures, but I don't see. Okay, it doesn't matter. When St. Paul visited Thessaloniki in 5th century Anno Domini, the city was a multi-religious center with active foreign communities living together with the Greek-speaking local population and sharing common cultural values as they were expressed in traditional Greco-Roman terms of religious piety and hospitality. Greek and Roman identities were distinctively intertwined in Thessalonian life. Also, Judaism thrived in Thessaloniki with a synagogue that functioned as a meeting point for St. Paul's teaching. The long period of peace and prosperity of Hellenistic and Roman Thessaloniki is today testified by ruins of sanctuaries, the Roman Forum, library, baths, and other buildings that shaped the administrative and religious center of the city. The first historical documented event of social violence in Thessaloniki is undoubtedly the persecution of Christians by the Tetrarchs in the beginning of 4th century. Under Galerius Maximianus, who ruled the eastern part of the Roman Empire together with Diocletian, the citizens of Thessaloniki was confronted with a strictly militaristic political system, the imposition of taxes, and the limitation of their freedom. Despite Tetrarchy restored stability to the empire, Rome was not restored as a dignified forum, but rather as a great fortress. This policy is reflected in the construction of the so-called Galerian Palace, a typical tetrarchic fortress-like complex of buildings in the southeast part of the city, located far from the original administrative, economic, and social center of Hellenistic and Roman Thessaloniki. Among the Christians, victims of Galerius was a high-ranking military and government official, Saint Demetrius, a top hero and holy man, who later became the patron saint of Thessaloniki. After the Edict of Milan had proclaimed religious tolerance in 313, a shrine Hieron was erected at the place where Demetrius was executed and buried. At the same period, Thessaloniki recovered under Constantine the Great, who used the city as his military camp and capital from 316 until 326. The leading role played by Thessaloniki during these years was reflected in the construction of major public infrastructure works with which Constantine endowed the city. This included new fortifications and water supply projects, the construction of a harbor on the southwest corner of the city, and the erection of splendid buildings like the so-called octagon inside the palace complex, and the first Episcopal church located in the place where the Church of St. Sophia still stands. We have already seen the Constantinian Rotunda, but speaking of coexistence and tolerance, I would like to remind you the harmonious ensemble of Roman military officers among Christian bishops and priests in the lower zone of the dome mosaics. Second event of social, political violence in Thessaloniki took place in 390 when the Emperor Theodosius I ordered the massacre of 7,000 or 15,000 citizens in the hippodrome of the city as a punishment for the murder of the Goth leader of the imperial garrison in the city. It was a political crime associated to the failure of Theodosius to incorporate Gothic troops into his army. This event, in combination with the fall of Rome by the Goths in 408, highlighted the necessity of the official recognition of the local hero and holy man Demetrius to protect the city beyond the imperial power. In this context, the Constantinian shrine Hieron of St. Demetrius was reconstructed as a splendid Christian basilica by the Eparch of Illyricum Leontios in the second decade of the 5th century. It is well known that throughout the Byzantine period, the worship of St. Demetrius and Christian belief in his miraculous grace spread far beyond the bounds of the city and the boundaries of the Byzantine Empire itself. St. Demetrius' miraculous healing were not limited only to Christian citizens inside his basilica. According to Byzantine texts, in the end of 5th century, a deaf and dumb Jewish girl was healed by St. Demetrius and Virgin in the Hieropytos Basilica. Moreover, the divine patron of Thessaloniki was a protector not only of the citizens, but also of the strangers, as declares the inscription in one of the 7th century mosaics in his basilica. The text of the inscription is associated to the demographic problem resulted from the settlement of immigrants in Thessaloniki area after the unsuccessful attempt by Avars and Slavs to occupy it. The stance taken by the Christian Church of Thessaloniki was not the selective ghettoization of immigrants, but rather their inclusion in the life of the city itself. In fact, hospitality was an essential Christian practice embodying common moral and intellectual virtues of ancient Greek and Jewish traditions. The citizens of Thessaloniki were prized for their hospitality by Nikephoros Humnus, a Byzantine scholar and official of the 14th century, who wrote that no man will be without a homeland as long as Thessaloniki exists. This phrase corresponds to the fact that at this period, Thessaloniki gathered a large part of the rural population of the hinterland who took refuge in it as well as a large number of foreigners who arrived in the Byzantine Empire as mercenaries. Furthermore, Thessaloniki in the late Byzantine period became a very attractive home for members of the aristocracy. Next, please. Their presence is associated to the erection of several monasteries that played an important role to the intellectual and cultural development of Thessaloniki. The surviving churches of the late Byzantine period are distinguished by their harmonious and elegant proportions and their splendid decoration with ceramics, the next, wall mosaics, and frescoes. Many of Thessaloniki's surviving Byzantine monuments were converted into Muslim mosques after 1430, when Sultan Murad II captured the city. The Hieropolytus was the first church converted into a mosque by Murad, as the Arabic inscription on a column of the northern colonnade testifies. According to historical sources, Murad ordered that the Basilica of St. Demetrius should remain in the hands of the Christians. Although the Basilica finally was converted into a mosque in 1493, St. Demetrius continued to be worshipped by both Christians and Muslims throughout the Ottoman period. As far as we know, this was the only common cultural practice shared by Christians and Muslims in Thessaloniki. The Jewish community settled here in 1492 abstained from the veneration of St. Demetrius. During the Ottoman period, the population of Thessaloniki consisted mainly of Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Its community had its own organization headed by religious leaders and a council of prominent citizens. The Ottoman approach of dealing with non-Muslim communities was to absorb and integrate their diversity without changing their religion and social culture. Of course, the tolerant attitude changed in times of political insecurity. For example, in 1590, after almost 150 years of coexistence, Muslims converted Rotunda into a mosque. According to the Arabic inscription existed above the south entrance of Rotunda, Sheikh Hortaji conquered Rotunda with his sword. In addition to the conversion of Christian churches, many impressive Ottoman buildings, both secular and religious, were erected in Thessaloniki. Bey Hammam, the luxury baths built by Sultan Murad in 1444. Few years later, the Bezesteni was built, a covered market still in use today with the addition of the early 20th century stores around the main building. Hamza Bey Mosque was built in 1467 and it is the first original mosque in Thessaloniki. Its large courtyard was constructed with columns and capitals taken from early Christian buildings. The Al-Adzai Imaret is a remarkable Ottoman mosque that operated also as an Imaret, Urs house, and Medrese, a radical school. Yeni, the new mosque, was the last Ottoman religious building and the only one located outside the city walls. It was built by the Italian architect Vitaliano Poselli in 1902 for the city's Donme community, crypto-Jews who converted to Islam since 7th century. Jews existed in Thessaloniki during Roman and Byzantine times were called Romaniotes. They had Hellenized their names and spoke Greek. In the middle of 14th century, Jews arrived in Thessaloniki from Central Europe and Italy. However, the most significant settlement was that of 15 or 20,000 Spanish Jews called Sephardic, who, being persecuted by Spain, settled in Thessaloniki in 1492. The Jews dominated the commercial scene, were active in all professions, and were the large labor force in the city. In the beginning of 18th century, Jews was almost the half of Thessaloniki's inhabitants. Their community was cruelly hit by the 1917 fire when almost all synagogues, schools, and charity institutions were destroyed together with the largest part of the city center. Greek Christians organized their community around the next place. around small Byzantine churches belonging to Mount Athos monasteries. Among them, St. Nikolaos Orphanos, the main church of 14th century monastery, with excellent frescoes preserved in a good condition. Next, please. St. Minas, St. Athanasios, Panagia Gorgoepikos, Nea Panagia, and other Byzantine churches renovated and expanded in the 19th century, something strictly forbidden by the Ottoman authorities up to that times. I would like to close this short presentation of the building cultural heritage of Thessaloniki with the words of Thomas Magister, a 14th century scholar and grammarian who, speaking about Thessaloniki, noted that its splendid public buildings and harbors, stoas and theaters do not make a city. Rather, it is its wise men who, through their prudent lifestyle, conserve the cultural values in a city. Thank you.
My heart for this overview that you offer us, Mrs. Mastora. I think that it was not possible to find a better interpreter of the life of the city, not only of the monument, than our friend and colleague, Mrs. Mastora. So now you can have, if you have questions, we'll have some time here, Mrs. Mastora. So if you have any questions. So practically, this old city had since the beginning a multicultural and multi-religious aspect. So this is something that you can feel it even now when you walk in the city, when you talk with people, especially in the center. And this is also very, how can I say, very strong reason for our students of theology to study more and to try to understand how multicultural environments and how religion can live peacefully in the same geographical area, something that it's not obvious, unfortunately, nowadays. So the Jewish community here was strong and old. They came from Spain, although there were some Romagnotes, as Mrs. Mastora said before. But you know that the very sad story about the deportation of the Jews in Poland and practically the elimination of the Jewish community in Thessaloniki. This is something that we still, at least some people still feel it, and there are different commemorations every year. Also in the university, we have a special monument for the Jews of the city, and also Jewish colleagues come here to see that. If you want to ask something or add something, everything was clear for you? Okay. Yeah, you can see the ancient Greek and the Alexander, the ancient Greek culture and the Alexander the Great. You can see after the Constantine that it was very crucial moment for the history of the Christianity. That is also a crossroad that with the choices of the 4th century, we can the choices of the 4th century are still valid for, at least for the Orthodox Church. You know, the whole story of the Third Rome started with Constantine and Constantinople as the second Rome, and still now after this almost more than 1,500 years, we we're still talking about the choices that Constantine and his advisors did, and the way that the Orthodox Church is organized until now, and the problems that creates the abandonment of the imperial way of administrating things, and especially in the church. So the lack of Constantine or of an emperor, it is in a way the reason that we face today this, let's say, conflict. This conflict in the Orthodox Church. Can you imagine that? For our friends, for our Catholic friends, this is not possible to understand. Also for our Lutheran friends, but in order to understand the Orthodox way of living and the Orthodox way of understanding, particularly the state, the relationships with the state and the church, we need to start studying it from Rotunda. Rotunda recapitulates the whole idea of church and state relations, that it is still valid definitely in Greece. I could say also in the Balkan world, and particularly for Greece, the legal personality of Church of Greece is public. So this means something. Also the Muslim, I will talk about this after. Also the Muslim minority in Greece has a public legal personality, and the Jewish community has a public personality. This means that the way of understanding the autonomy of religion passes from the state. Of course, we cannot say that it's the same idea that Constantine, but it is something that it is developed, it was developed through the centuries, and this is important, according to my opinion. It is well accepted from in Greece, from the Orthodox Christians, but also generally for the Greek people. So being Greek and being an Orthodox is something that it is obvious. So I think that the same also is in other Balkan cities, but countries. But we need to understand that this land, Europe generally, has a strong and long history. So the conflicts are based on this long history, and our friends from America and our colleagues from United States or I don't know, from the East, it's hard for them to understand why these conflicts are happening. Why Ukrainians con Russians? Why Greeks, I don't know, con Bulgars some decades ago. So if we do not, if we're not aware of the political, national development of the relations between the states and the peoples all these centuries, it's hard also to understand why, how difficult it is to have an interreligious education, and how difficult it is also to create new material in order to overcome, to pass all these difficulties of the past. You know, one of the elements of the deal we did with the with the state of North Macedonia, it was to change the books and the history and start talking in a different way of understanding. We are in 2022, okay, and we are all parts of the Ottoman Empire, and we're trying to reestablish a way of communication that it should be in order to avoid all these the difficulties of the past. And one other thing, and I will stop here because I don't see questions. I'm trying to 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 cover it. Okay. The fall of the Ottoman Empire, it was a big deal, and we still pay, let's say, the results. We have the results, at least also in ecclesiastical level, for the Orthodox Church, of the fall of the Ottoman Empire. And the fall of the Ottoman Empire was also pushed and helped, let's say, from the Western countries. So it's a mixture of geopolitics, religion, economical interests, the role of France in the Ottoman Empire, the role of England, now the role of the United States and NATO. So, and religion comes, and religion is in there. The role of the ecumenical patriarchate, the synod, the acts of the synod that I gave you yesterday, that shows the orientation of the Greek Orthodox Church that is totally different from the orientation of the Serbian Orthodox Church, or the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, or the Georgian Orthodox Church. So the same church. So I don't, if you want anything to add, so we can pass to the second. Thank you very much again. It was really astonishing and very, very helpful what you present us in your way, that we know your way. And we really thank you.